Is it only me, or the first 2 weeks of Donald Trump in office feel like 2 years?
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
The Trump administration has revoked a decision that would have protected roughly 600,000 Venezuelans from deportation.
U.S. President Donald Trump confirming late this afternoon that he plans to slap 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican products beginning on Saturday.
To begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
President Trump's crackdown on undocumented immigrants continues as ICE carries out raids in major cities across the country.
President Trump signing an executive order tonight that attempts to end birthright citizenship in the United States.
Yes, I know, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of Donald Trump in the news, but today in this video we're going to focus exclusively on interesting areas for a national interest waiver under the new Donald Trump presidency. Hi, my name is Oscar, and as you know, I'm a scientist, not a lawyer, and in this channel we focus on EB2 NIW, EB1A, green cards in which you can self-petition, and that means that you don't need to have a company sponsoring you, a job offer, and you can do it without a lawyer, saving thousands of dollars if you know how to do it. And that's exactly what we focus here in our websites, in our courses. Let's start this video with the topic of today. Yes, you know, Donald Trump is president again, and that means that there is a new administration with new priorities. And while this may not be super relevant for an EB1 green card, for example, it is quite relevant for a national interest waiver, because in that category, the priorities of the nation, which are reflected in the priorities of the administration, will take a significant role in the first prong, especially of the matter of Danazar. And how do we understand those priorities? We look at things like executive orders, laws, memorandums, speeches, a lot of different documents from agencies in the government that can give us really solid hints as to what they are going to be looking at in terms of priorities. So today we're going to focus on recent executive actions to understand what areas are positively impacted by Donald Trump. So we're going to focus on the positives, okay? I know there's a lot of fear, a lot of issues that this administration is already causing, particularly on immigration, but let's focus on the positive and let's do something actionable, something that can be useful for many of you. So a few areas that we will discuss today are here. We're going to cover fossil fuel industry endeavors, resource, water management, defense, technology and innovation, domestic manufacture, and maybe others when we talk about these areas. And you may be wondering, but why are there so many areas that you can already talk about? Well, because Donald Trump, like we saw, is permanently on the news, but he's also signing a lot of executive orders, and that has something positive, which means that we can start looking at the priorities in a very objective way, because there are documents already reflecting that. And so what we're going to do in this video, I'm going to show you these types of titles. Those are the titles of the presidential actions. It may be executive orders or memorandums. And I'm going to show you a couple of quotes from those executive orders to argue why I think these areas are interesting for a national interest waiver case. So let's start with fossil fuel. We knew before he won that Donald Trump was pro-fossil fuels and maybe not so friendly with sustainability and renewable energy. But there are two presidential actions already from January 20th, the first day he was in office, the day he was inaugurated. One is called Unleashing American Energy, and the other one is Declaring a National Energy Emergency. And these two executive orders focus on energy, and they talk very well about fossil fuels. That's why if you're a petitioner and you have been working on these areas, this may be very interesting for your case. So one of them says, for example, that the US needs to unleash affordable and reliable energy and natural resources and to rebuild the nation's economic and military security. So actually, they link in this, Donald Trump links in this executive order, these fossil fuels, these energy endeavors with not only the economy, but security of the nation. And I show you this so you can already see that in these documents, we usually already find nice points to talk about when we discuss national importance of endeavors. So what the president is asking is to encourage energy exploration and production. So any petitioner that has experience and plans to continue working on exploration, production of, for example, oil and gas, this type of text is going to be really useful. Then it also says we need to establish our position as the leading producer and processor of non-fuel minerals, including rare earth minerals. So that goes beyond oil and gas. It touches on other minerals that the US is particularly interested on. And we saw actually Donald Trump talking about that when they discussed Greenland, which is another hot topic of Donald Trump almost threatening to invade territory from the European country of Denmark. It also says that we need to protect the US economic and national security and military preparedness by ensuring that an abundant supply of reliable energy is readily accessible. So again, giving more and more reasons why this type of endeavor can be important. We need a reliable, diversified, and affordable supply of energy to drive our nation manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, and defense. So we see how this can trickle down to a lot of different areas. The president directs the different heads of agencies to do all those things, to put in practice what he's saying in the executive order, and also to consider issuing emergency fuel waivers to allow the year-round sale of E15 gasoline to meet any projected temporary shortfalls in the supply. Why do I put this here? Because even though we are arguing that fossil fuels can be a nice field for an NIW, we see how he mentions E15. And for those of you who doesn't know what E15 is, that is gasoline that has a 15% of ethanol, of alcohol, that could come from renewable sources. So even when we are talking about fossil fuels, those of you out there that are working on more renewable endeavors, on sustainability, you can always find something to grab onto, because when we're talking about energy security in general, these alternative energy sources will also come into play. And actually here, literally saying that with the E15 gasoline reference here. Another nice area that we can discuss is resource management in general. We already touched on it in the previous executive orders because he was talking about managing the territory, managing state and federal land. And here there are two other presidential actions, one called putting people over fish, and the other one is emergency measures to provide water resources in California. And those touch a lot on this type of resource management endeavors, or can touch on that, because based on the California wildfires, Donald Trump is saying that the state of California needs reliable water supply and sound vegetation management practices. So they want to implement new policies about that to deliver more water and produce additional hydropower. So look again how renewable energy is present in this type of executive order that deals mostly with resource management, but here they mention specifically hydropower, okay? So sometimes we are a little bit too negative when we say Donald Trump doesn't want renewable energy, and we may be able to find some stuff that is interesting for those kind of endeavors. Defense is a big one. There is this one that he published called the Iron Dome for America, where you can see how Donald Trump and his administration is going to be all about defense. And you can also find a lot of his speeches in front of the press talking about NATO and how he wants European countries to spend more on defense. And here in this particular executive order, it says that the US must deploy and maintain a next generation missile defense shield and guarantee the security second strike capability, implement a plan for the next generation of missiles and ballistic, hypersonic, advanced cruise missiles and other next generation aerial attacks. The US needs to be protected against. So a lot of weapon and defense capabilities, and if you are a person that has been doing research on this area or has been working on this or is supporting this kind of industry, this can be an interesting area for an NIW now. And let me make a quick break to talk about the do-it-yourself resources you can gain access if you visit our website eb2niw.info for EB2 NIW, and you can see that we have a lot of different resources, a lot of articles that you can consult. We update it from time to time. And above everything, we encourage you to check out our flagship EB2 NIW course. We also have one for RFE if you are in that stage. Unfortunately, if you encounter an RFE, check that out. But if not, check out the NIW course. We have tons of information for do-it-yourself petitioners like yourself who want to learn how to craft a successful petition. We teach you the requirements for the category, how to put together a cover letter, recommendation letters. We even teach you how to put together a professional or business plan. You can submit questions in all lectures, and once a month we meet in a live Google Meet call so you can ask me face to face what questions are bothering you or what questions are concerning you. So don't let this pass and join today. Technology and innovation is a big one as well. It has been under the Biden administration with the artificial intelligence executive order that, by the way, Donald Trump revoked, but he has two new orders, particularly one on artificial intelligence here on the left, and then one about digital financial technology and assets. And those two already predict that this is going to be a hot topic in this administration. In fact, we saw for artificial intelligence how Donald Trump presented this big investment by private entities like OpenAI and other companies, where they announced $500 billion infrastructure investment in the United States. And in the executive order, it says that the US needs to maintain the leadership. And to do that, they need to develop AI systems so they can solidify the position as the global leader in AI and secure a brighter future for all Americans. For all Americans. And you see these words really are strong and really signify that this administration is going to be putting a lot of attention to this topic, particularly now that after this was signed, we learned how the China DeepSeek artificial intelligence tool is actually on par or even better than some of the American technology. And I'm sure Donald Trump will not let that go unchallenged, and he's going to make sure that the AI industry in the US is really positioned as a leader in the world. And regarding the other area that I was discussing, blockchain, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, the executive order also says that they need to support the responsible growth and use of digital assets and blockchain technology and related technologies. So if you're a person that has been working on this particular area or has the expertise to do that and want to put together a good proposed endeavor about this, you can see that this administration is already producing documents showing their interest in that particular area. Let's move on to the next one. Manufacture. We are seeing recently, and I don't have it here, but we just saw it a few hours ago, how Donald Trump is imposing tariffs on really close allies like Canada, other countries like Mexico, and he's already talking about the European Union. And he has a presidential action here from January 20th called America First Trade Policy. And here they want to review the impact of all trade agreements, and they want to issue recommendations so these agreements are being implemented in a manner that favors domestic workers and manufacturers and not foreign nations. And why do I bring this here? Because if Donald Trump wants to impose these tariffs, if it wants to revise the agreements that the United States has, it means that there's going to be less free trade among different nations, and that could cause multiple things to happen. It could cause, of course, inflation and prices to go up, which is the opposite of what he theoretically wants. But what it can also cause, or what he wants it to cause, is that the American industry really blooms. And we are going to see if that happens, but that's what he is proposing with his policies. So if you have an endeavor that is trying to promote internal manufacturing in the US or bringing back companies that left the United States in the past years or decades, I'm sure we're going to see more and more initiatives from the government in this regard, and therefore this could be an interesting area for yourself. So a few conclusions. Donald Trump has been very productive in his first weeks in office, generating a plethora of executive actions and press releases. And this can be beneficial for NIW applicants. So I'm not going to be complaining about Trump all the time. This is something positive because it brings clarity and evidence that you can use as to what areas will be the priority in the current period of 2025 to 2029. So with that positive note, I wanted to end saying that you have to keep an eye on the White House website of Congress as well. We haven't seen much legislative action yet because it's only been 2 weeks, but we are going to start seeing laws moving from the House to the Senate and vice versa. And those of you who are working on an NIW case, you want to pay attention to executive orders, but also to laws, so you can assess what are objectively, what are the initiatives that really tell you that these are priorities for the United States. So you can use that in your National Interest Waiver petition as a do-it-yourself petitioner, or even if you're working with a lawyer, you can provide that information to your lawyer to help them really put together a solid case. So I hope this video was useful. Let me know if you want us to do this type of video from time to time, so we review a few initiatives that the government has been taking, and you can be informed as to what you can use for your own case. With that being said, thank you for being here, and thank you for subscribing, for giving it a like, and I will see you in the next video.